Welcome to our third O&M presentation, Are You Ready for a Guide Dog? I'm Meg Robertson, the Director of the Orientation and Mobility Department at the Mass Commission for the Blind, MCB. Although I'm the narrator, this presentation is a group effort from information gathered from orientation and mobility specialists around the state, including our O&M MCB staff and our partner community O&M staff at the Carroll Center for the Blind. And of course, guide dog users. Our department has developed a series of O&M presentations which have been and will be continuing through March. As Samantha stated, please go to MCB's website at www.mass.gov/MCB for a schedule and the recordings of the other trainings. The recordings and handouts are on the O&M page on MCB's website, and you do have to search for it a little bit. To begin, the title slide is a photograph of a man walking his yellow lab guide dog through a shopping mall. The guide dog is looking right, maybe distracted by other shoppers. There's a lot of misconceptions or misperceptions on what a guide dog can do or not do. The goal of this presentation is that if you're interested in applying for a dog, this will hopefully make you have an informed decision. Choosing a guide dog for your mobility tool is step 100, not step 1. Basic O&M skills are needed before switching to a guide dog from a cane. A cane can be placed away and put in a closet when you get home, but a dog cannot. So getting a guide dog is a personal choice. A guide dog, as I mentioned, is the same tool as a long cane, but it is used differently. O&M training is needed. Most individuals who are legally blind use a long cane and not a guide dog. And this is one thing I hear from a lot of folks is, I just became legally blind. My family tells me I need to get a guide dog. That's not the first step. The first step is getting your orientation and mobility skills, and then looking at using a guide dog as your mobility tool in place of a cane, a long cane. And having a dog is a choice, not a choice for everybody. And guide dogs will not solve O&M problems at all. In preparing for a guide dog, you have to get acceptance to a guide dog school, which usually requires prerequisite O&M skills and other skills. An O&M report usually is requested from a comms the person is working with or has worked in the past. So let's start a little bit at the beginning. Orientation. Orientation is the ability to know where you are going and where you want to go. It's moving from one room to another or walking downtown for a shopping trip. Mobility is the ability to move safely, efficiently, and effectively from one place to another. This includes walking without tripping or falling, crossing streets, and using public transportation independently. So your orientation mobility skills are for you to understand where you are, where you're going, how are you planning to get there by using a device or a route, what are you going to need to know and do along the route, so usually you need long cane skills, and these skills will allow you to will allow forward movement into space, providing tactile surfaces and information for the next 2 to 4 steps, covering one's body width. That's what your cane does for you. A cane will detect obstacles and changes underfoot and/or changes in elevation. A cane is an extension of one's hand, providing dimension, texture, sound, and supports development of additional auditory skills. Other skills you need for applying for a guide dog are advocacy, problem solving and critical thinking skills, semistic search skills, excuse me, keeping a calendar, which means managing appointments and note-taking, animal first aid, cleaning skills, that's cleaning up after the dog, and also cleaning the environment the dog is living in. Measuring skills to measure the correct amount of food that the dog needs, and financial planning for the cost of owning a dog. Physical abilities need to be looked into as well. You need the strength to manage a dog, ability to execute the body movements required when completing turns and following the dog, ability to react quickly enough if the dog exhibits inappropriate behavior and makes directional changes, so you can follow the dog quickly. Additional physical is motor skills, range of motion, reflexes, flexibility, and coordination. Ability to walk at a quick speed for more than 20 minutes and over a mile. Ability to maintain balance while negotiating curbs, steps, and traveling over a variety of surfaces. There's lots of benefits to having a dog. A dog will take you around obstacles rather than encountering them as you do with your cane. Usually walk at a much faster pace using a dog. It definitely can help with veering and keeping you on a straight line, a path of travel. There is increased interaction with the public, which is a plus, and it could be a minus. It definitely offers companionship. A dog is a lot more comfortable to have next to your feet than your cane. There is an increased personal safety perception that having a dog, a lot of people feel safer than just walking with their long cane. And there is no studies at all that says your personal safety is that you are safer with a dog than a cane, but your perception is that you are. It also using a dog may increase your confidence in your travel skills, even though you have good travel skills with using a long cane. Some people feel that their confidence really is enhanced when they switch to a guide dog. What a guide dog doesn't do is it doesn't determine where to go or how to get there. It doesn't determine the color of traffic lights, when to cross, or is it safe to cross. That is all your responsibility. It doesn't determine when you're lost. Again, that's your responsibility. It doesn't read maps, signs, or follow GPS instructions, which people seem a little surprised with that, but dogs don't read. It can't orient you to the environment. That's your responsibility. It does not provide advice for problem solving. That again is your responsibility. What it can do though, is it can follow the user's instructions, right, left, forward, stop, find the door, or follow the person in front of me. Very simple directions. It travels routes in a fairly straight path, avoiding head level obstacles and obstacles that are in the team's way. It will signal like a cane, changes in elevation such as stairs, curbs. It intelligently disobeys, which means if it perceives there's a danger, it will not continue on the route. And you have to understand what the difference of the danger is. Is the dog distracted or is it a real danger? I've had many people call me that will tell me, I didn't listen to my guide dog and I continued and the dog tried to prevent me from going and I didn't, and I fell down a hole. Dogs may also memorize routes and routines. So watch out for autopilot. You should break up your routine or your routes to and from work or to and from the store and doing a different route. So the dog doesn't get used to just being in an autopilot. We had one incident with a woman that was working with the MBTA at her home T station. They were filming her for something for the MBTA. And they wanted to take a video of her just walking with the dog up a long sidewalk. Well, the dog refused to go because that was not the way home. And the dog had been doing this route for 10 years and the dog knew where to go. And the dog would not take direction from the owner. And it said, it didn't say, but it said, you know, we're not going home. We're not going that way. So they had to redo the route because the dog just would not go the different route that the owner wanted it to do. So you need to be aware of that. There are many responsibilities to for a guide dog user. One is you decide the destination and route. You set the pace for travel. You determine when it is time to turn. You analyze an intersection to determine the correct time to cross. And you set and determine landmarks that you won't actually touch because the dog will take you around it, but you need to have a higher level of environmental awareness with getting around these landmarks or knowing that these landmarks are there. Additional responsibilities include you care for the dog on a daily basis, including feeding, grooming, parking, just taking the dog out to do its business, and recreational activities for the dog and playtime. You want to use and maintain your alternative mobility tools and strategies, such as your long cane, protective techniques, and trailing skills. You want to be able to instruct others on the treatment of and the interaction with the dog. You want to make informed decisions for travel so not to detrain the dog. And this is a lot with if you are a visual traveler and you are using a dog, you're anticipating the turns before the dog can ask you or indicate there's a turn coming up. The dog will eventually get detrained and then not do its job. It'll just be as if you're walking the dog. And then when you need it to make a decision, it's already decided you're making that decision and I don't need to work at this. And you are financially responsible for food, routine vet care, and the bills, meds, groomers, and boarding fees as needed. If you're a new guide dog applicant, you're usually 16 years or older, and that's due to being a mature young adult. You have poor functional vision, again, that you are dependent on the dog for a mobility device like your long cane. You have a clean and stable home setting. And again, you're financially stable to support the dog. You have completed formal orientation and mobility training. You have independent travel skills, and that is traveling by yourself, not just with your friends and family. You travel outdoors regularly. And you travel independently using your long cane. And you have an active lifestyle. You have to demonstrate good decision-making skills. And again, ability to control and appropriately correct the dog. A lot of people have difficulty with correcting their dogs, especially in public. And that's a really special skill to learn. And you want to maintain the skills that you learn at the guide dog school. So guide dog schools, there are about 15 guide dog schools around the US, all raise their own dogs. Different schools have different rules. Some may retain ownership of the dog and you don't have legal ownership of the dog. Others, once the dog is through its training, it is your dog. You may need to pay an application fee. Again, this is to see if you are financially stable to be able to pay an application fee and that you have a willingness to commit to the training. These may be waived on an as-needed basis for individual reasons. The training and the cost of the dog is paid by the school until the guide dog is assigned. So while you're at the school and all the training that has gone into the dog, which runs about $70,000 from when it's born until it's finished its guide dog training, that is absorbed by the school. You do not have to pay that. But once you have the dog, you are now responsible for any care and upkeep of the dog, financial. Transportation is usually provided to and from the school, paid by the school. First-time applicants training may take up to a month at the school's training site. There may be a hybrid system. They do 2 weeks at the school and then they go home with a guide dog trainer, or you may, depending on how the school is setting up their training, you check with them and see what the expectation as a new applicant it will take you to get your guide dog training. The guide dogs are trained as well as the new owners are trained how to work with the dogs. So some considerations when choosing a school is having an answer when you get this question is, why do I want a guide dog? Definitely talk to other guide dog users and your comms. We don't recommend, we will give you different options and different experiences. Our people we have worked with that have gone to different guide dog schools, but we can't recommend a school. That's up to you to do your interviewing with the different schools. Again, some are home-based. There's one school that is 100% home-based. There are some of the residential schools now do a bit of home-based training, or you have to go to the residential school for a period of time. There may have special training needs for people with other disabilities and blindness, and they may be able to adapt the program to meet your other disability, and different schools focus on this and other schools don't. Type of breed is very important, and the type of size of the dog. I know some people have had very big dogs, and some people work well with small dogs. And so that's something to understand. And the different breeds. Most are labs, golden retrievers, and shepherds, but they can vary the dog with special request, but that is a much longer training waiting time to get your dog. Wait time is very important to look at. Sometimes you may have to wait a year, 6 months. There are usually openings in the winter months versus the summer months. Those are the most popular time, the summer months. A thing to be aware of is the climate the dog has been trained in. I know a lot of people think going to Florida to the guide dog school down there is great in January, but the dog has probably been raised in Florida and not used to the cold or the winter weather up here. And so you need to adjust that, check into that. I know people have gone out to California for guide dogs, and the dog has worked very well in the Northeast area. So again, talk to them and see where their dogs usually go. Transit experience is very important. Almost every guide dog school will be working on buses, but if you work on a subway or a train and do a lot of plane travel, you may want to check and see what kind of training they do with the dog when they're starting to work with the dog and teaching it guide dog skills. You want to ask about the follow-up guide dog instructor visit policies. If there are any guide dog issues that occur upon your return, will there be a follow-up right after you come home? Or if there's an issue a couple of years from now that you want them to come and look at, what is the policy and how quickly can someone come out to see you? So remember, it takes about 2 years to become a great working team between you and the dog. And when you first get the dog, it's still a puppy. It's about, 18 to 24 months old. So it's still fairly young. So there's a lot of work to do with a new guide dog. One thing to be aware of too for high school students is we recommend that if you are interested in becoming a guide dog user, go to apply to the summer before your senior year of high school. And so you have a year to work with the dog in a familiar environment. You don't want to be going to getting your new guide dog the summer before you go off to college or even a new job in unfamiliar environments that you have to learn the environment and then teach it to the dog. It's really better if you have had experience with the dog at least a year ahead of moving somewhere else or doing something different. For college students, we recommend if you don't do it your junior year, the summer after your junior year of high school, then do it the summer after your freshman year of college because you're familiar with the college at that point and it'll be an easier transition. And to be aware of the life of a guide dog, a working guide dog is around 9 to 12 years. And we've had guide dogs that had to be retired at 4 years. We've had guide dogs that have worked past 12 years, but that's pretty rare. So be aware of that. It's always a loss for people when they have to retire their guide dog or the guide dog dies. So it's just something to be aware of when you are planning for a guide dog. Some personal considerations. Again, why do I want a guide dog? I want a pet. Wanting a pet is not a reason to get a guide dog. A guide dog is a working dog, and it's not a pet. Depending on your home environment, how will the home pets interact with a new animal? Will household members interact with a working dog versus a pet? And you need to consider all that when looking at getting a guide dog. There's a major time commitment in training and caring for a dog. Again, the financial considerations, ability to interact with public around access and guide dog issues is very important. You are going to be the ambassador of a guide dog, and you need to know how to appropriately interact with the public, tell them not to touch your dog or pet it, and also trying to enter restaurants. There are a lot of times issues with restaurants. And you just have to keep educating people. And as I mentioned before, is preparing for your guide dog retirement. When you return home from guide dog school, Traveling with a guide dog versus a long cane is very different than doing it with your cane before. So O&M training is recommended upon your return home, and it may be a one visit or it may be more than one visit. Definitely contact your orientation and mobility specialist before you come back so we can set up an appointment to be there when you first get back home and review your routes with you. You have to be doing a lot of training with your coworkers and family members, again, how to interact with the dog. And you need to practice with the dog on your routes. Dogs need to be worked every day. So that's very, very important. Responsible dog ownership is to be sure that you are maintaining your cane skills. We've had dogs that have gotten sick at work and a person doesn't have their cane and they have to get home. So you really need to have your cane and be ready to use your cane when an incident might happen with your dog. And again, you have to think about the decision when to use a cane, when to use your dog or not to use your dog as your mobility device. Bars, concerts, restaurants, concerts and bars can be very loud. There's food on the floor that's not healthy for the dog. Because you can take your dog with you, it doesn't mean you should. So you need to decide what's best for you and the dog. Recreational activities. When I go on my trips for Ski for Light, I have a number of guide dog users, and they leave their dog at home with family and friends because they're going to be skiing all day and that the dog's going to be left in a hotel room all day. We do take guide dogs hiking, but again, the dog, what kind of hiking are you going to do? Is it comfortable for the dog's paws and whatnot? Also, weather. It may not be good weather to take a guide dog out when it was extremely cold this morning, and that might not be a good day to be taking your dog out for long trips. Fireworks can really traumatize dogs in general. A guide dog is still a dog, so it still has dog issues. So be aware of that. And again, how much traveling do you do? Hotels, time alone, getting on and off a plane. All this can work really well with a guide dog, but sometimes it doesn't. So you need to be aware of your lifestyle. Is that appropriate for a dog? Again, responsible ownership for a guide dog is understanding the impact of stress levels for a dog and how dogs react to stress. And this takes a while to learn. Some dogs, there's never a problem with stress, and other dogs, they have a couple of near misses with cars or trucks. It can impact the dog's performance, and the dog might have to be retired. But sometimes just letting the dog take a break, that's enough. So you need to understand dogs have stress too. Boarding cost is being prepared to pay for boarding cost. And reemphasize that the dog is not a pet, but a working dog, especially when it's in harness. So service dogs. Guide dogs are considered service dogs under the ADA, but not all service dogs are guide dogs. Guide dogs receive very specialized training to work with individuals with legal blindness. I had a staff member contact me with a family that was interested in getting, they had a service dog for their child who was in a wheelchair, and it was trained as a service dog to pick up things and help move her pull her wheelchair. She was legally blind, and they wanted to train it as a guide dog. That does not happen. The guide dog is raised with the guide dog school and gets that training through the guide dog school. And I've had other people tell me, oh, I have a dog, it's my guide dog. And I'll be like looking at their iReport and realize they just got registered. I'm like, I don't think that's a guide dog. But because he was blind, he was an older adult, because he was like, well, now I'm blind, I have a dog, it must be a guide dog. And no, that's not really true. So there's a lot of misinformation out there on dogs. Other types of service dogs are trained to meet the disability related needs of their handlers who have disabilities other than blindness. Some dogs may be self-trained or work with a service dog organization. And usually there's a cost involved with the service dog organization, which is different than the vision guide dog organizations. They are not guide dogs. Therapy dogs, which provide comfort, are not considered service dogs under the ADA public accommodation laws. Service dogs are considered the same as guide dogs in regards to the law. They're allowed in everywhere a guide dog would be allowed in. So that is similar, but therapy dogs, that's not true. There, you can go for more information on a handout on the different ADA service animal laws is at www.ada.gov and Google and search for service animals. So there is a difference expectation for guide dog users versus service dog users. Guide dog users are expected to personally care for the dog. That means you're taking the dog out walking, you're curbing or parking and picking up the waste, which is what curbing and parking means. You're feeding the dog and you're managing the dog's health, etc. You are responsible for that, not any other member of your family. That is your responsibility. Service dogs, which are not trained as guide dogs, are not held to this requirement. So they may be other members of the family that are caring for the dog and taking care of its needs. That is not a guide dog. So your service dog rights. A guide dog is allowed everywhere that a long cane could go, with very, very few exceptions. A service dog must be harnessed and leashed and under the control of the owner and is not a nuisance. You may have a guide dog that is aggressive and growling and barking a lot in a setting, a public setting, that you may not be allowed to come back until the dog is under control. It doesn't matter if it's a service dog or not. If it's not under control of the owner, they're not allowed in. Now, generally, any place that is open or serves the public, including areas of employment, are required to allow a guide dog in. These include restaurants, grocery stores, retail stores, hotels, office buildings, hospitals, school campuses, and parks. Now, just because the law is on your side doesn't mean that you can come in without a fight. So just to be aware of that, you're going to have to educate people on places you go. For example, I had a person, his wife was in the hospital and he was talking to me about he was going to visit her and he is a guide dog user. So I suggested to him that he call the hospital ahead of time and not just show up, but let the hospital know, I'm a guide dog user. These are the rules. I want you to be aware that I can bring my guide dog in. So there wasn't a big argument, or the clerk at the front of the hospital would say, you can't come in. That was resolved before he got there. So that was a good advocacy for him to be able to get in the hospital without a hassle to visit his wife and bring his dog. A no pet policy does not include service dogs. So if a hotel or a restaurant or any place that you go have a no pet policy, a service dog does not fall under a pet policy because it's not a pet. And that's hard for the general public to understand, but it's something that you'll be educating a lot of people on. The next two photographs are a gentleman, an older gentleman walking in a park with his white cane. And the other photograph is a yellow lab in a harness walking with its owner across a street. Now, these are both good mobility devices. One isn't better than the other, though I think if you talk to any guide dog user, they will say that the guide dog is the best thing they've ever gotten in their life, and they're very grateful to have gotten a guide dog and gone that route. There are other people who switch from guide dog and maybe have a guide dog for 10 years and then switch back to a cane for a few years and then switch back to a guide dog. It's really a matter of preference, and there isn't one that's better than the other. It's what you want and what works best for you. Like to thank you for attending. I hope that this presentation has answered some of your questions on guide dogs, and you're thinking if a guide dog is an appropriate tool that I want to work to on when I've done my orientation and mobility training. And it might be something you might want to work for in the future. I want to thank the orientation and mobility staff at the Commission for the Blind, who really helped me with this presentation. Grace Cummings, Cindy Curran, Cynthia Dyes, Mike Dion. And a special thanks to Michelle Antonelli, who helped me at the basis of starting this presentation for another one that we did a number of years ago. If you need to get more information, you can email me at meg.robertson@mass.gov. There are a number of guide dog resources that will be on the MCB website about guide dog schools, guide dog standards, resources to find guide dog users, and self-screening tool to see if you're ready for a guide dog. And there are different resources to call MCB to get an orientation and mobility specialist. And I thank you for coming.